there, Jonathon here, and welcome to Learn to Playthrough, and welcome to my workstation. Today we're going to be starting the painting process of the Stranglers and the Tentacles with some priming. And here we have the Stranglers. And the Tentacles. So the first thing we need to do before we prime these miniatures is to give them a bath. And this is going to get rid of any dirt, dust, grime, or oils on them that might stop the primer from adhering. So before we give the Stranglers and the Tentacles a bath, or should I say before I give the Stranglers a bath, since the Tentacles don't have any gaps, being a one-part miniature and all, is if there are any gaps that need filling, now would be the time. So let's go ahead and take a look at these gaps on the Stranglers. On the front side of the Stranglers, we have gaps where the tentacles and the left shoulder meets the body. And then on the back side, we have gaps where the tentacles, the left shoulder, and the tail meets the body. So to fill gaps, there are three items that I use. This is called green stuff, where there's a blue part and a yellow part, and when you mix them together it turns the color green, hence the name green stuff. And green stuff I use for the larger gaps. And since there's no large gaps on the Stranglers, I'm not going to be using any green stuff. But instead I'm going to use this Gorilla Super Glue Gel, and also this 100% acrylic resin matte varnish. So let's go ahead and take a look at these gaps after they've been filled. On the front side, I used some super glue where the tentacles and the left shoulder meet the body. And then on the back side, I used some super glue where the tentacles and the left shoulder meet the body, and then I used the matte varnish where the tail meets the body. So now that the gaps are filled, let's go ahead and get these miniatures all cleaned. I'm using some warm soapy water with some Dawn dish soap in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and use some clean, warm water to go ahead and rinse them off. And then I'm going to use this soft bristle toothbrush so that I can go ahead and get in all the nooks and crannies of the miniatures. So let's go ahead and give our Stranglers a Saturday night bath here. La 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 la. And make sure you be careful of the tentacles and their long skinny fingers because they could possibly break off or bend. And then for the tentacles, sure they're only just one piece, but with the tentacles, if you're at the area that's near the base, it would cause a lot of pressure to break them. But if you get farther down towards the other end, you could possibly break them a lot easier. So overall, just be very careful. Okay, so we'll go ahead and dry them off here. Got our tentacle coming out, looking all nice and pretty. Strangler. Get him all dried off. And then once I'm all done washing and drying them, I'll go ahead and take them out to the outside where I do my spray painting at and go ahead and prime them all up. So now that we're ready for some priming, I have a dowel here with some poster tack on the end that I use so that I keep the object that I'm painting a little bit far from my hand so I don't spray my hand with a bunch of primer. And then for the primer, I'm going to be using the white primer and also the black primer from the Army Painter. The white's going to represent the highlights from the light shining down upon the miniature, and the black represents the shadows underneath the miniature. Okay, so we are good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the washing and the drying of the Stranglers, the Tentacles, and then I'll meet you outside to get the Stranglers and the Tentacles all painted up with some primer. Hello there, Jonathan here, and we're at the side of the house where I do all my spray painting at. And it's a nice cool evening here in Colorado. So let's go ahead and get the Stranglers and Tentacles all spray painted up with some primer. Our first one up here is a Strangler. First we're going to go ahead and use the white to represent the highlights and the light shining down upon the miniatures. And here's the white we're using from the Army Painter. Going to spray it right down on them. Alright, that's looking really good. And next we'll go ahead and use the black to represent the shadows underneath the miniatures. And we'll use our black here from the Army Painter. Alright, that is looking really good. Alright, so let's go and get a tentacle out here. And here's our tentacle. So let's go ahead and use our white to represent the highlights. Kind of cylinderish there, so not really catching a lot of the underneath. Well, maybe on the tip there. So let's go and check it out. We'll use the black here for the shadows. Alright, well actually that looks pretty good. Alright, so with everything looking good and covered, I'm going to go ahead and finish up the priming the rest of the Stranglers and the Tentacles. And then I'll go ahead and meet you back inside at the workstation to continue on. Hello there, Jonathan here, and welcome back to my workstation. We got the Stranglers and the Tentacles here all primed up with white and black to show the highlights and the shadows. And here are the Stranglers. And the Tentacles. So out of the 3 fillers that I have, I only use 2. The Gorilla Super Glue Gel and the 100% acrylic resin matte varnish, both of which worked out really good. Now for the Stranglers and the Tentacles, there are a lot of pictures out there, including a couple pictures in the Shadows of Brimstone City of the Ancients adventure book. So definitely we'll have to check out what look to give the Stranglers and the Tentacles. Well, that should do it for now. So let's go ahead and get our enemies back down to the gaming table for some more action, and then get them back up here to continue on with the painting process.